Cambridge Investment Group is our parent company that oversees Cambridge, our independent broker-dealer, and also an RIA. It's also another RIA called Bridgeport Financial that we started 2 years ago. Between those entities, they're focused on different sides of financial services. Cambridge and our Cambridge RIA, 4,000 financial independent professionals all across the country, and roughly $1.7 billion in total revenue. And we're focused on what do they need. I would say, what is Cambridge's superpower when it comes to all of our advisors? People and culture. That's what most of the advisors who come in for a home office visit will talk about. What's important to Cambridge? Are they hearing the same message from everybody they meet? And they undoubtedly always say, everybody seems to be on the same page and knows what the strategy is, in similar answers from that perspective. So that's what I try to call the superpower for Cambridge. My role in trying to oversee superpowers like that, try to focus on our sales team, our marketing team, our consulting teams, our relationship management team with our top advisors, our marketing and our event planning teams, our due diligence and research teams, just to name a few. A lot of field-facing positions with financial professionals, but you can't do it alone. My division can't work without our compliance and advocacy teams, our finance teams, our ops and service teams, our technology. Like, we're all connected. Even though we're like 3 separate divisions within the firm, we're all connected trying to achieve that purpose. In a session this morning that I was on a panel, I mentioned a conversation about the number of financial professionals has dwindled over the last 15 years. At one point, there was reported 330,000 active financial professionals. Last count, roughly about 289,000. So as an industry, Cambridge, not by itself, we have to solve finding more people that are interested in coming into this profession. We have to find them, whether they're new out of school, career changers, whatever that looks like. How do we attract people to such a great industry that's been good to all of us? So I think it has to start there. And then how do we, with that next gen, whatever that next gen looks like, how do we develop them? Because I don't think they're going to be developed and learn the same way that people did the last 45 years of Cambridge's history, right? People came into the business then and maybe gone through a training program from a wirehouse or a regional, or they went through an insurance firm, and then they came over to the independent side, or they left the wirehouse and went to fee-only channel. Whatever that looked like, the growth curve was different for that. With all the acquisitions that have gone on in the independent channel or the fee-only channel, when you look at all that activity, and then you think of people that are interested in this business, well, their options have probably changed. They have more options than they did before. If they want to come into this business, they could come in as a financial professional. They could also come into a firm like Cambridge. They could go into a product manufacturer and distribution and learn the business before coming over onto being a financial professional. All depends. I try to ask the next gen the question, what's important to them? And then build a plan around that. Same thing I say with a financial professional. If they're thinking about a continuity plan or a succession plan, what's important to them? And build a plan to that. If they want to build a plan, a succession plan that has an internal component, and they identify people to groom to take their spot, or people, okay, build a plan to that. If that means bringing new people into the business and then groom them the way that they manage money, teach them core skills, that's one way of doing it. If you want to come into the business and be a part owner, well, acquisition activity is making people look at opportunities they never had before. Instead of building a business from scratch, some people can come into this business and potentially be a buyer and buy into a practice, have ownership while being a financial professional. It's the difference between running a practice and running a business. They could potentially have more options. I'll define for you what I say inside Cambridge. No matter what side of the business, for us or for our advisors, I will say we have 3 avenues of growth. We can recruit new advisors, we can grow organically, or we can do acquisitions. Some combination of 3 in any given year, to me, is what Cambridge can do. It's also the same thing I would say to a financial professional. How do you want to grow? Do you want to grow through adding new advisors to your office? Do you want to grow your existing business organically, or do you want to buy something? They have the same questions in front of them that we do as a business in this financial services market. So if we can answer that question, first you have to decide if we want to add new advisors, we want to find new advisors, so we're always going to do recruiting. Financial professionals in their business, they can decide if they're going to add more advisors to their practice or groom their existing team. Everybody has to focus on organic growth. Like, Cambridge, 1.7 billion of total revenue that the advisors do. We can't let that grow flat. Like, you can't let that grow at zero. That has to continue to grow. So you have to focus on it. So you have to focus on the things that you're doing. Do you do consulting? Do you do practice management? Do you bring things that will make them look at lead generation? Some combination of tools and services, outsourcing services. Well, do they have to build their own websites, or do they come to us instead of finding it? Do they have to create their own marketing material, or do they outsource to our marketing team? There's things that they can do. Do they hire their own staff, or do they use our virtual office assistant program? Like, there's services that firms can do, Cambridge included, that can free up time for the advisor's business so they can spend more time. In a coaching analogy, is an advisor doing red time or green time? Because if they're spending more stuff on that's not generating organic growth, revenue, that's red time. You don't want to spend a lot of red time. You want to focus on the green time. So you start to coach to that. And all the coaches and all the firms that my peers at all the other firms, we all use similar terms to describe. You have to focus on growth, just growth. I know you asked organic growth, but in a business, if you're not growing, you're dying, my phrase. So how do you get them to not focus on the red time activities that are slowing them down from spending time with clients, generating new leads, generating new business, and ultimately new revenue? I like the phrase smart compliance. Sometimes rules and regs they're to be interpreted. And every firm, every compliance officer can interpret rules and regs differently. And they can look at something and say, how does it apply? We have to figure out how to apply it to our business model. I think the approach that Cambridge takes is we'll look at a rule, we'll all read it, and even though I'm on the growth and development side, I'm still going to read a rule because we're all going to sit at the table and say, how does this apply? We'll also say feedback is a gift. So we'll talk to our enterprise leaders and talk to them and get their opinion on a new reg or rule that's coming down and see how they're thinking of it. And then you figure out how to apply it. And sometimes we'll joke about the power of three. Sometimes when you're looking at something, there's three answers to a problem or an opportunity. You go left, right, or in the middle, looking at a regulation. Do you get too loose, too strict? Sometimes it could be right in the middle is where you should be. And I'll apply that thinking here too. Look at a rule, figure out what it means, what's the interpretation, and then figure out how to apply it that makes sense, right? Business sense. That's where the smart compliance comes in. There's some things that, we're all going to have to look at that is probably like, oh, this is the path we're on. But then there's a lot of other things that could come down that are left to firm to interpret and then see how it happens on the back end. As we're doing an interview, I'd probably say the nicest thing about acquisition is it's a hot media topic, right? Everybody's talking about it. They're talking about the publicly known deals. I mean, Cambridge alone, probably in the 15 years I've been there, we've probably consulted on over 350 transactions between advisors, some that we were part of, whether we helped them with a purchase agreement, we lended them money, or some we didn't know about. They just did it on their own. They didn't need anybody to do a buy-sell between two people. So I think there's a lot more activity that goes on in the marketplace than just the public ones that everybody's talking about from an aggregator perspective. That said, it's an avenue of growth, right? So go back to your organic growth question. There's a lot of activity, but you know what I probably wonder? How many people think about what the cost of a client is in an acquisition versus organic growth? I don't think too many people do the business homework to figure out if they're really spending the right amount of money for growth. And how much does it cost to do marketing campaigns and lead gen for organic growth versus the cost to go buy a client and buy a book of business? I don't think they do enough of that homework as a business owner. I try to talk to advisors about take the advisor hat off, put your business owner hat on, because we need to ask different questions. So for me, I ground myself there with the advisors in our own conversations at the home office and with advisors. But to your question about the industry, yeah, there's a lot of noise. It's only one avenue of growth. And I think if you've been reading some of the same articles I've been reading the last few months, some of the aggregators are having a hard time with organic growth. So without acquisition growth, then they may miss their numbers. Cambridge, 45 years in the business, we have a 20-person practice management team. We have other coaches and consultants in different areas. We've been focused on what they need to help grow their business. And I say help, it's really assist, because they're driving their business. We're just trying to figure out what dots can connect to that. How can we help? Do we have something that's high priority, medium, or low priority? And then if we can deliver a service, a platform, or a tool that makes their business easier or helps them grow, Great. And I think that's where we've already been doing that. So it's not new for us. We haven't chosen to go down the strategic acquirer route to be known as just an acquirer, Cambridge that is. If the acquisition is right for our people and culture, that's the superpower, then you wouldn't want to do an acquisition that could disrupt. And some people will go into that with that mindset, and some people will just be a straight acquirer. It's two different ways of doing it, and not right or wrong, just different for our strategy and our belief. Yes, it's important. That's why I called it the superpower. You can't sell it. You can't touch it. I don't think I'm alone in my Cambridge colleagues in saying that. Like, the advisor or a client has to feel it. Come to an event, come to a home office, you're going to feel the culture. I hug everybody I see that when we get to our events, right? It's just how I am. It's how I do. And it's a different, and I'm not saying other people don't do that, but I think it's in the actions, how you approach a problem. If an advisor calls up and says, hey, I'm thinking of this for my business, can I do this? The answer isn't yes or no. The answer might be maybe yes, or hey, let's look into that to see if it makes sense for both of us before you just jump to two answers. It gets back to the power of three. And until you kind of go through that, or you experience, or you feel that, you ask questions and you go through that, when the advisor can feel that, that's how they know what the culture is.